If you're one of those people that have troubles completing their comic book projects or any art project for that matter, you might want to stay tuned for this one. Greetings, people of the internet. I'm Scott with Serkworks Art Labs. Welcome, mad creators, to the underground laboratory where we create robots, aliens, zombies, and other imminent threats to humanity. A lot of times when I do those things, they are in comic book form. I consider myself a bit of a comic book artist because comics are one thing that I really love to create, probably the thing I love to create the most. So that's why a lot of this content on this channel is comic centric, and today is no exception. So my comic book, Young and the Dead, it's kind of like, it's a kids versus zombie story. It's like Goonies meets Night of the Living Dead. And I always say that this is the first comic book project that I actually ever completed. I mean, the first issue of a comic that I completed. I had a number of false starts before that, other ideas that I started and stopped, and I always had problems completing a project. But then, I was thinking the other day, that's not exactly true. This isn't the first comic book that I completed, but it is the first comic book I completed as an adult, or as a non-kid, I guess you would say. I'm including kind of teenagers, young adults into this thing as far as completing projects, because the weird thing is, let me rewind a bit. So one of the best pieces of advice, or the piece of advice that I always give to people that have problems completing their art projects or comic book projects, specifically comic book projects, is start small. Start with like a 4-page comic, or even a single-page comic or whatever, because a lot of people, when they're approaching comics, they'll want to create either a graphic novel, which is crazy for your first endeavor into making comics, or even a single issue, like a 22-page issue. That can be a little daunting if it's your first go-round, if you haven't done one yet. And it's a lot of times, and like I said, I've suffered this in the past. This was my biggest problem. I've had several false starts, from high school when I first really started wanting to get into doing comics like as a professional, and I thought that that's the route that I was going to go, and all that, and I could never complete a project. So I still stand by that advice. Start small. Start with a mini comic, 4 pages, and then if you get your 4-page comic done, then move to like an 8-page comic, and then gradually go up from there. Because once you create a manageable goal, once you complete that, then you've got that sense of accomplishment. You can go on and you can create bigger, larger projects, like your graphic novel or series of graphic novels, or whatever the case is. But very few people can start with that graphic novel and complete it. There are some people, there are exceptions to every rule, but usually that's not the norm. So that's what I would recommend. Start small. So I still stand by that advice, but I was thinking that Young and the Dead, that was not the first full comic book that I completed, only as an adult, because when I look back, I had created a number of comic books as a child. And the funny thing is, I pulled one out. This is the first, right here, this is the first comic book I ever completed. So I'm gonna dive into this. The interesting thing, and the reason why I was able to complete this at such a young age, is because when you're a kid, you don't think about all you're thinking about is the art. You're thinking about having fun with it. You're not thinking about, oh, do I have the right tools and all this kind of stuff. You just dive into it and you create. And that's sort of what I want to get across today, is if we can sort of get into that mindset that we had as a kid and not be so precious about, oh, it's got to be perfect, it's got to be great and everything, and just do the work, just have fun with it. I think we're going to start getting more projects done if we can start to think in that way, like the way we did as a kid. Because, a lot of times as an artist, people will ask me, well, when did you start drawing? One of the responses sometimes I'll give is, well, when did you stop drawing? Because everyone as a kid draws. And then sooner or later, some people kind of fall out of it or whatever. Maybe somebody will look at something they've drawn and they'll say, yeah, that's not really good. And then they're like, well, maybe I'm not a great artist, so I'll stop. I won't continue this. Or maybe somebody hammers it into your skull that, this isn't a realistic path to go down, that they're, this whole starving artist, myth and all that kind of thing. It kind of gets beaten out of us. And a lot of us, they stop doing that. But as a young child, pretty much everyone draws. Anyone that's a non-artist, you can ask them, have they ever drawn anything or whatever? And they'll probably say, well, when I was real little, like in kindergarten, we used to color and do all that stuff. And then sooner or later, a lot of people just, they either lose interest, and that's fine too. I mean, not everyone is, that's not what everyone wants to do, but unfortunately some people are kind of pushed out of it when they probably kind of like it. But that's what I want to get across in this video. Have some fun looking at this. Might be a little cringy, but you know, I'm not at all embarrassed by this, because this is a point in time and I will get better as I go. So anyway, let's have a little fun. Let's dive into this comic book that I created as a kid. It'll be a little trip down memory lane for me, and it'll kind of show you that, you know, this is not perfect. Obviously, I'm a kid, but I didn't worry about that because I was having fun with that, and that's what you should do too. So let's dive in. All right, so here it is. This is the first comic book that I actually ever completed fully. Now, prior to this, I had done a lot of, I have just a handful of comic book ideas that I started doing and did a couple pages and didn't do anything. But for whatever reason, I decided, oh, this is going to be the epic thing that I'm going to do. Now, like I said before, a lot of times I would advise against that. But as a kid, it's a little different story because you don't have all those other factors really. So just first off, so the color, you can see this is the actual artwork for the cover. I think I filled it in with Sharpie, and of course this is previous to me really knowing anything about tools or like dip pens or brushes or anything like that. You can see right here, Scott Circling Comic. These are just like rub-on letters. So this is pre-computer, anything like that. They used to have these little letters that you would take each letter and you set it down and rub it in. And I did a pretty good job lining everything up all right. I'm kind of actually surprised that I was able to do that. Of course, the font is, you know, this old English font doesn't really fit with this, but as a kid, I didn't really know any of that stuff. So I made a Xerox copy, and then I colored this in with Prismacolor color pencil. This is probably right around the time that Crisis on Infinite Earths came out, and if you're familiar with the Anti-Monitor, this villain character was pretty much inspired by that. He looks pretty similar. Made a few changes, I guess. And then, of course, I had to have my own comic book company. I don't know why I decided with this Quest Comics. I think I liked the idea because I wanted something different, but I wanted something that was more along the lines of like a Marvel Comics, where you could put you can put your little character heads or whatever in here. So I made this giant Q. Of course, this thing takes up almost as much room as the actual logo. So not the best design, but of course, this is throughout this whole thing that I'm showing you this is what I'm talking about. You don't worry too much about that kind of stuff. You just worry about creating something that at the time is pretty cool. It says first issue shocking double size issue, years in the making. Now, my thought behind this was, of course, as you're a kid, you think years in the making. I mean, everything seems like a long time. I probably came up with the idea, and by the time I finished, it was probably over a year. So, or it could have been 2 years between ideas and actually finishing it. I don't think it took that long to finish it, but I think the ideas and everything and me finally sitting down to do it. So anyway, that's the whole idea behind that. I don't know why I didn't color that in. That's curious, but you can tell when I did color this in, it kind of faded some of the letters. And then I'm looking here and I see some notes. And this is basically, I know it's really hard to see. I used to write super light. I can even barely read it now. But it looks like there's 12, it says 1 through 12. So, and these are just the general idea for each subsequent issues, which I never finished, but I did finish the first one. But the first one, it says Origin of the 10th Earth, issue 2 Origin of Condor, 3 Dark Demolisher's first appearance, which I believe is this guy. So anyway, yeah, kind of fun. So yeah, and it's just obviously the character, you know, I could see how I was trying to squeeze this guy in so you could see his hand, because it probably needed to be a little longer. And you know, that's something as a kid you have a lot of things that, or somebody who's just starting off or just learning kind of the craft of making comics or drawing in general, you don't always take into account making sure something fits, because a lot of times you're not doing your gestures and your things and planning that stuff out, which is, what you really should be doing. So anyway, there you go. That's the cover, both in black and white. So here, what does it say? And there's probably so many bad spelling errors in here. I still can't spell very good to this day, but it says, Earth, now a shadowy world, unlike it used to be in the year 2000. This was the Earth then. All right, here we go. Let's see if I can. Now, also take into account that this is just done on regular copy paper. I didn't know that you typically would draw at a larger size, but I didn't worry about that because I was a kid. And that's why this is done. I can start to see some yellowing and stuff here. And what I did was I would just take a comic book and I trace it. So you can see, I didn't fill up the whole page because I did know the dimensions of a comic book. I wanted it sort of that dimension, but it was still drawing sort of actual size, which you can do that too if you want. And then it's like, and this is now. And then I guess I give my brother a credit here for art assist and character. So he maybe helped me with some of my characters. But yeah, so this is the Earth, these are the 10th Earth. Basically, the idea behind it is there is an overpopulation problem, and we're going to probably get into that when we go into this. But what happened was they tried to duplicate the Earth so there'd be more room for people. And in the process, something happens, and then as the Earth's being cloned, it goes crazy, and it was supposed to only be cloned once, but then it clones itself like 10 times, and at the last one, the original Earth blows up. And then the 10th Earth was kind of formed as that last Earth was blowing up. So it stood there in sort of suspended animation as a partially blown up Earth. And then it sort of becomes like a prison planet, or just a desolate wasteland. Either I don't know if I was going for like an Escape from New York vibe, or if it was more along the lines of like Road Warrior or something like that. Anyway, so there we go. And I'm not going to read through all of this, but this is probably talking about look at these faces. I love it. All right, so but anyway, so this is talking about there's the overpopulation problem and just sort of this dystopian type world. The vegetation's dying off and all that kind of stuff. They're developing the device here. This is kind of going back to the stuff I still love drawing all these crazy thing. I would love to redo this now with but they're trying to duplicate. I guess they started duplicating crops and things like that so they can grow more food for people. And I'm not going to go into all of this. I don't want to read it because we don't have that much time, but it's just talking about, I guess, fixing the thing. And this is what they're like, the Ark or whatever. They're building these ships because they got to fly people off world. And then more kind of duplicating, practicing, all this stuff, trying to figure out how they can duplicate the Earth. So they first duplicate a globe. I guess if you can duplicate a globe, you can duplicate the actual Earth because they're very similar. At least that's the kid logic behind it. And so here it goes. And then then they tested on the moon, of course. And then here's the machine firing, and then you can kind of see it duplicating. And look, man, this is my scientist. I guess I've always been big on mad scientists because he's supposed to be a regular scientist, but look at his hair and his face and everything. Man, and there we go. We did it. Yes, it is done. And obviously back then I wasn't worried about using a compass or anything to draw my circles. We got a kind of a little oblong shaped Earth there. Again, filled in with a Sharpie. And then this is them building the arcs and everything to fly the people out in space while they're duplicating the Earth. So they're getting everyone off world. Now, here's the thing. As I remember when I created this book, I had presented, after I was finished it, I presented it to my local comic book store owner, and I was so happy with it and everything. And then he kind of just ripped it apart, like, oh, there's no way that this can happen. This is like totally against physics, and there's no way that any of this could happen in science and all that. And of course, it's just kid logic to me. It's like, oh, it sounds cool, yeah, but he kind of threw a wet blanket on the whole thing. But but it didn't stop me. I mean, I still went ahead and created that stuff. It's like Axe Cop, if you're familiar with that comic Axe Cop, where the older brother draws the stories that his little kid brother is making up, and it's just fun, and they don't you don't worry about that stuff, and some great things come out of that, and that's why I have so much fun just looking back through this. But you can see all these ships here. They're kind of gathered around the moon, it looks like. All these arcs with all the people in it, and of course, trying to get everyone on these space arcs is just like, you're kind of ridiculous. I mean, how are you going to convince somebody who maybe lives in some sort of tribal world to get on this, that's never even seen a TV, that they got to get on this thing and everything? But that was my idea. So here we go, the scientists, and of course we've got the news crew coming in here. They're trying to get the scoop and everything like that, and he's kind of telling them, no, you got to get out of here, and I don't know what he's bargaining with. I just love this scientist. He's got these braids and this crazy hair. I guess that's what I thought a future scientist would look like. But these guys are just kind of, they don't really care. They're just there to get a scoop. So, and then they're reporting on this, and they're saying, no, you got to get out of here. It's not safe. What if something goes wrong, type of thing. And then I don't know, these are people watching Off-World. Look at this TV with these stands and everything. So anyway, so he's getting ready to start. It's like, and this is actually, I kind of don't mind this. I mean, this is kind of pretty good for a kid to think of, the panel, sort of the paneling with the numbers going through, but 10, and of course this doesn't make sense because the 10 could have been a 1 and a 0. But anyway, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then even the ellipses here, and then pushing this thing. I've done it. So he duplicated the Earth. So everything's great. Mission accomplished, right? But these guys are still on Earth, and I guess this is I don't know what's going on here. I don't remember, but anyway, he's informing the president that it's done, and then these guys are going in. I don't know, is it supposed to be a gun? I think it's supposed to be a camera, but it looks like a gun. Maybe I figured, yeah, it looks like a gun, but it's supposed to be a camera. So anyway, this guy comes rushing in here to film something, and he trips over. I don't know, this is kind of bizarre. There's this weird thing right here this guy tripped over. I don't know why you would put that in front of a door where people are walking through, but that's what kids think of. So, and then he trips, and of course the camera goes flying and hits the console, and as the smoke clears, we start to see that, oh no, it's duplicated another Earth, and he goes to grab this little handle to stop the process, and it breaks off. So these reporters have just basically sealed our fate and just destroyed everything. So here's the laser, and it continues to duplicate these Earths. Still 2 moons though. We still got the 2 moons, but we got all these Earths, and then something happens, and then it looks like a laser goes through the Earth, and like here I was talking about before, we kind of see the Earth exploding, and as the last Earth explodes, as the Earth explodes, here I guess is the Earth exploding, and there's the 10th Earth right there. You can see it's halfway exploded. And then it says, fortunately, the doctor, Loglin, I guess, he escapes in this ship. And then there's a stowaway. There's a kid in this ship, he notices. And then it looks, did he eject the pod? I don't know why that happened. Oh, he says, here's a... Kid, get up here. He says, kid, get up here. And he says, here's a bag of things you might need. Good luck. For whatever reason, he just jettisons this kid into space. And I don't know what happens with the doctor, why he does that. But of course, this is very Star Wars with the escape pod looks very similar. Crashes on here. We got somebody correcting my spelling because I didn't spell crashing right. And then here we have, this is the epilogue. The kid gets out. And he's supposed to be a little kid, I think, or maybe he's supposed to be a teenager. Look at how close the eyes are. Oh boy, but I do kind of zoom in, and it said, what is it says? A child with no known past left to rot on the 10th earth. As he breathes, he realizes that this is the first air taken in on the 10th earth. Or is it? Continued. Next, the coming of Condor, which I guess is what the name of this kid is. And he ends up becoming this guy here. So anyway, yeah, and then of course I feature these people. None of these people actually even appear in the whole series. You don't even see this guy yet. I mean, you see him, I guess, as a kid, but this is also very, I think I got a lot of influence from Jonah Hex at the time, or not Jonah Hex, but at the time they did, Jonah Hex had went into their future, and it was kind of like a Road Warrior thing, and it just became Hex. And so a lot of that stuff, that's where I get some of these influences from. But yeah, that was kind of a fun look through that. And like I said, the reason why I'm doing this, I just want to show you guys, you know, don't worry too much about all this stuff. Just have fun. Create your books. Once you create them, you know, when I did this, I wasn't worried about having the right tools or anything like that. And I get so many questions, and there's nothing wrong with this, because I'm curious about what tools people use and everything too. But you know, so many people, they want the right tools before they can start a comic. They want to know the right sizes and all that stuff. You don't need to worry about that. Just do a mini comic. If you're drawing if you're drawing a comic book on the back of a napkin or something, it's still a comic, and it's still something that, you know, that you can, you know, create this thing, you can hold on to it, and then, you know, I'm not ashamed of this stuff. I don't hide away from that. Obviously, I'm showing it to you guys now, and, you know, it's not great work, but I was a kid at the time. And even if you're not a kid, even if you're an adult and your artwork is along these lines, you just got to stick with it. You got to keep creating, and your stuff is going to get better and better, and just the fact that I wasn't worried too much. I wasn't trying to be precious. I completed this book, and then, you know, and then it took me, and then I got to the point where, you know, I got out of it, or I got in that mode where I was like, oh, I got to be a professional now, and I've got to figure out all the right sizes, the pages and tools and practice, and it's got to be perfect, and keep reworking things. And I wasn't worried. If I drew a page here, that was the page. I didn't go back and redo it or anything like that. I was on to the next book or the next project when I was a kid. But somewhere along the lines, I lost that magic, and it took me a while to rediscover it. So, you know, my advice is don't lose that magic. If you've ever had it to begin with, or if you haven't, you know, try to tap into it. Just create and have fun with it, and then just keep making more, and your work's going to get better. So now, you know, I can take something like this and I compare it to something that I do recently, and obviously it is a lot better because I've learned along the way. But this also goes to show you that no matter where your work is now, it can get to a point where it's a lot better, but you have to put in the time. It's not going to be to think that you're going to be able to create this masterpiece at your first, you know, just right out the gate. That's not realistic, you know. So you know, hopefully that'll kind of serve as, you know, as sort of inspiration to you guys, and hopefully just really think not only, you know, my advice to start your project small, but also try to tap into that idea of not being so precious, and just you know, having fun and creating something kind of like you did when you were a kid. All right, so there you go. What do you guys think of my first completed comic, The 10th Earth? Had a lot of fun reviewing that, taking a look at it, and some of the stuff surprised me that I was doing back then. Some of it, like I said, a little cringy, but you know, I just want to hammer this point home that don't be too precious with your work. It will get better. I mean, the work that I'm doing now is light years ahead of this, because I've been drawing so much, it's naturally going to get better. So don't worry so much about where you are. Just put that stuff out there. Be proud of what it is at the time, and know that it's going to get better. And I think that's going to help you complete either your first comic book project, or get back to, or maybe you were like me and you did a bunch of stuff as a kid, and as an adult you just can't get into it anymore. Just think back to how that was like, that feeling, just you know, of just having fun with something, creating something, not worrying too much about the science of it all, or whatever the case is. Just breaking out some loose sheets of paper, your pencil, You don't even need a desk. Just get on the floor or your bedroom, start drawing away, and who knows what you'll come up with. You might be surprised, and you might actually start completing some projects. So that's my advice for today. I'll see you guys later. That is all.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you like what you saw and you want to see more, hit that subscribe button. Also, you can follow me at Serkworks on social media, and now you can support the work that I do on Patreon. Do you like making comics? Then go to Serkworks.com and pick up the Comic Maker Starter Kit. It's packed full of fonts, brushes, templates, and more. And best of all, it's totally free.